Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations. I am Mary-Ann Duke Okon, and as usual on the show, we take you around the world, especially Africa, to give you an update as to what's happening. And today we're talking about Haiti. And for those of you who follow the news, you would know that there's been an assassination on the Haitian president, and it's been a very big news, a very big story, and it's continuously developing. One would wonder, why this has happened on Haitian soil. But if you've been following the news, you would see that Colombians and Haitian Americans were arrested as the perpetrators of this very dastardly act. But I am not an expert in this. My guest is a political analyst, and he is a political editor with the Southern African Times, and he'll be joining us this evening to give us, some analysis on what's been happening in Haiti. The last time that Haiti made so much of a spread on, the news across the world was when Haiti had its the biggest environmental problem, which was, the flooding. But today, Haiti is back in the news all for the wrong reasons. My guest is Brian Lunga, and he's joining me from the United Kingdom. Hello, Brian. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Mary-Ann. Thank you for having me, and hello to everyone
Great.
watching.
So, of course, for those who do not understand what's happening in Haiti, or if there is actually an assassination and why there was an assassination, give us a background quickly into, the assassination of President Moïse.
I think first things first, we have to, commend the Haitian people for being very resilient. Um, a lot of people need to understand why Haiti is very important in world affairs. Haiti is essentially the beacon of Black empowerment. It's the beacon of Black independence. So when we do bring Haiti to the news, we've got to understand that it is very important for those very reasons. And of course, in the historical context of the United States, Haiti is awfully important. So they are a nation that we need to talk about more and have conversations on how they can overcome some of the challenges they've had, not only just politically, but as you mentioned, environmentally. The assassination of the current president happened on July the 7th. Heavily armed military men, thought to be military trained, did come into the president's residence and shot the president dead. The first lady did survive. She was there today, a couple of hours ago, for the funeral, and as you can imagine, those were uh, very unsavory scenes in the sense that it was very somber and very emotional in every aspect.
Let's talk about the men that were arrested. I mean, their faces were all over the news channels across the world. We see that most of them were Colombians, and then we had two Asian Americans. And the question I always ask is, how were these men so sure of where they were going to, how they were going to perpetrate this act, and they broke through all of the protocols? Because I mean, I've never been to the Haitian presidential villa, but I'm imagining how my presidential villa in Nigeria looks. It's an impenetrable fortress. And so the question for the average person is, how did they get in? Was there help from someone who was on the inside? This are questions I'm sure that you probably might not be able to answer, but from the information that you've been getting, can you help us understand?
Interestingly enough, this afternoon, as the funeral did take place, when the chief of police arrived, everyone was shouting murderer and everyone was shouting justice for the president. Some are very convinced that the chief of police had a hand to play in this. And as you mentioned, when we speak of presidential residence, we're speaking of one of the most heavily guarded residents in the world, in any country, really. And despite its economic challenges, despite its political challenges, any country where where the president resides is very heavily guarded. So the questions still remain. At the moment, we've got the Florida man Christian Emmanuel Senon, the 63-year-old doctor, who's still being touted as the prime suspect to this horrendous crime. So as it stands, I think we will be right to speculate, we'll be right to assume that there is an inside man. And as we go, I think we will see over the next few days, I'm hoping, that some concrete evidence will come out as to who was the inside man, who was the man that dealt the hand to this horrible crime that Haitians have witnessed over the past few days.
Well, the other question is, the political state of Haiti before the president was assassinated. And of course, in every country, I mean, even the United States, if you ask the question as to, oh, are there people who love the president? Is he a good president? Has he delivered in terms of, the promises that his government has made to the people of Haiti? How happy were the people with him? In the case of President Moïse, what could be said about his leadership and the manner in which he went about, leading the people of Haiti?
I think what's very telling is that if a gang member, a gang leader, a very prominent gang in Haiti, came out and spoke against the killing and said, no matter what grievances we had with President Moïse, he was still our president. It was up to us to decide how we interact with the president. It was up to us to decide how our relationship with the president builds and how it grows and how it goes the opposite direction. So I think he was held in high regard within some of the population because he had brought about a certain level of stability in a country that has been lacking a lot of stability. You mentioned, of course, the environmental disaster, but there was also a political instability that has been happening. For example, they didn't have a parliament. The elections were delayed, and since 2018, they've not had any elections. So one of his ways moving forward was to try and bring about some sort of stability by having elections over the next few months. But clearly, that has changed. He had already elected a prime minister before he died. A couple of days before he died, he elected a prime minister. The prime minister was not sworn in, but now that prime minister is said to be the prime minister that everybody legitimately sort of recognizes in the international community and, of course, Haitians on the ground. But he was a man that clearly had sympathies across the country.
I'm more curious as to how the people of Haiti are taking this. I remember that there was a man that was fingered in all of this to be suspected, one of the suspects as to the killing of, President Moïse. What was the relationship of President Moïse and this man that has been fingered by many? Was it a good relationship? What could we interpret it as a case of one who wanted to take over from the president, someone who was not happy with his leadership, or was it just a mistaken? Because people might say, well, I don't like the president. Doesn't mean that I would want to kill a president, even if I do not agree with his leadership style. But can you expatiate on the relationship that this man had with President Moïse before his passing?
I think the challenges with places such as Haiti, where there is a certain level of instability, and we can't at all attribute it to just political instability. There's so many factors involved in it, and I think the challenges you face with that sort of boiling pot, so if you will, is that you will find there is a lot of hands at play here. You will find that everyone thinks they can do a good job. And this is the case of and point where we are with Haiti. You have certain individuals or groups that claim they can do a better job than the current president. And of course, the fact that they have not had any elections and that President Moïse was effectively ruling under decree, where he didn't have command a lot of power within some of the police chiefs, within some of the army ranks. So it makes things very difficult in that aspect. So I think, as I say, my speculation from what I've been hearing from one or two friends in these publications is that over the next 2 3 days we will see a huge shift in the suspect case, or who the suspects are rather.
Now, of course, there are questions as to who hired these Colombians, and I mean, what relationship with the Colombians have with, Haiti. But we also know that Haitians have called on the United States government and the UN to wade into the matter. 2 days after the incident, we were made to believe that maybe FBI agents were already dispatched to Haiti to, begin investigations. So far, how much help do you think that the collaborations between the U.S. and Haiti? What responses have we gotten? Are they positive enough? Do you think that these investigations are going the way it should go, and most of the suspects being cleared? Because of course everybody keeps asking, who hired the Colombians?
The FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, are on the ground in Haiti as we speak at the moment. There was a delegation that was sent over to sort of see if Haiti needs military assistance from the United States. The delegation did go back to the US, and the US has said at the moment they don't see a need of putting US troops on Haitian soil. However, FBI, Department of Homeland Security, will be helping with the investigations as we go on. But there's been very strong, powerful assistance in terms of monetary assistance and what they call the core group. This comprises of Brazil, USA, Germany, the EU, and the American states. There's that core group has said, listen, we need to find a resolution to this as soon as possible. And as such, I think they'll be ramping up the efforts by bringing in either some level of intelligence to help, quickly gather this matter and quickly conclude the matter.
Those who are joining us, this is Conversations with Mary-Ann, and we have Brian Lunga. He is the political editor of the Southern African Times, and we're talking about the mystery behind the assassination of President Moïse of Haiti. And investigations are ongoing. Many questions are being asked. Of course, groups have come up in their numbers to ask for, other countries to come in and help deal with the situation. In the meantime, now that we know that there was a prime minister that was picked even before President Moïse went on, was killed. What does this portend for the politics and the government of Haiti? The prime minister, yes, is there as a representative of the government, but do you see a tussle coming in the future as a result of the death of President Moïse, or a power shift of sorts?
I think the most critical thing that has happened over the past few days is the fact that the interim prime minister that was there just before the death of President Moïse, who was Claude Joseph, I think the most important thing he's done is that he has stepped aside. As much as he wanted to continue as the prime minister, and at some points did say that the man that was elected a couple of days before the death of President Moïse, who was Ariel Henry, had no legitimate power. They met for a few hours, and eventually Claude Joseph decided that he better off stand down, and Ariel Henry becomes the country's prime minister. So over the next few weeks, what Henry has promised is he has promised a government of some sort, a consensual government, he calls it, a government that will unify Haitians, a government that will deliver elections over the next few months, hopefully, if things go well.
Well, I'd like to let those who are watching us know that you can be part of the conversation, ask questions. Brian is here to answer your questions. If you have any curiosities as what's happening in Haiti, and of course the assassination of President Moïse, his wife's testimony, or an audio that she put up on Twitter. There are so many question marks. People are asking questions. People want to know. So if you do have a question, please feel free to ask in the comment section. Okay, well, there's one here. This is from Lucia Ibe. She's saying the situation in Haiti has been bad for a long time. The window of the president has been some strong opinions. The widow of the president has some strong opinions of who were behind it. And she also goes ahead to say She's from Dominican Republic, so she's been following the situation for a while. Care to comment, Brian?
Yes, I mean, thank you very much, Lucia. That's very true, and I think, as I've been alluding over the past few minutes within the conversation, that the challenges have been immense for the Haitian people, and we really need to, I think, as a world, to a degree, hold hands and commend them for their amazing resilience throughout all the challenges that they've been through, not only recently, but even since the inception of Haiti as a country, when they managed to fight for independence. They are awfully resilient, and for that, they need to be commended. And the widow does have a lot of things to say. And of course, rightly, she was there. But I think at the moment, one of the best things we can do is sort of wait for her to fully conclude on her speculations on what she deems went wrong and what and who she deems did this horrendous act to her husband.
Interesting. I mean, the plot thickens. I want to go back to the comment section quickly, guys. So if you have questions, thank you very much, Giga, for being part of the conversation. I see Pablo. Thanks, Pablo. Hello. He's saying hello from Los Angeles. Well, we're following the story from Haiti, of course, the assassination of President Moïse, and of course, the all of the question marks around his assassination. How did they gain entry? How did they even flee the scene without even getting noticed? Of course, people are also asking who shot the president. I mean, we've seen the parading of these suspects. We've seen videos, we've seen pictures of these Colombians and the two Haitian Americans. The big question is who shot the president? How did these people gain entry? And another question I would like to ask you, Brian, even though I know that you're not the head of security in Haiti, but I'm hoping that the guys who work with the Secret Service, everybody in that presidential villa is being questioned. I'm hoping that something has to come out of it. It's taken days. It happened on July 7, and today is July 23. Is there hopes that we would get to the bottom of this matter and the right person would be, arraigned and made to, bear the consequences, and justice will be done on President Moise's behalf? I mean, because we know how these things can be. Sometimes the wrong guy ends up in prison, and the bad guy flees. Will we see justice really being done in this case?
I think for the sake of peace in Haiti, I really genuinely hope that they do find the right man and they don't find a scapegoat, so to speak. The people are very upset. Riots have some sort of demonstrations and riots have happened across Haiti, yeah, especially in the capital. People are upset and people do want to come to the bottom of this. And I think if this is not resolved, it will deepen a crisis, a political crisis that is already deep enough. People would want to see some sort of action being taken. I assume and I presume that in any investigation as we speak, everyone is being investigated at the moment. Everyone is being asked questions around, especially the presidential guard. Why were they let in? Who let them in? And if a man that lives in Florida can command so much influence and power, the prime suspect that is, why is he commanding so much influence and power from such a great distance? Does he have the enough money to command such an operation? These are highly trained individuals, and as they are highly trained individual, believe me or you, I don't think they'll come at a very cost, a very small cost. They will come at a very high cost, a few $100,000. I suspect. I mean, I'm not expecting this in these matters of espionage, but I suspect they're not very cheap. It's not very cheap to hire those people. Yeah.
So someone's asking a question here. Let me just quickly go to that question. Um, Someone is saying, so are the Haitians upset about the assassination, or are they celebrating the death? I started off by saying that there are different types of people in a country. There are people who probably are not happy with the president, and there will be people who support the president until the day he steps out of office. So in this case, I think Giga is asking, are they celebrating or are they angry about the assassination? What feelers are you getting?
The general mood of Haiti at the moment is justice for President Moïse. That is the general mood. I think we can safely say that most, of course, there will be people celebrating because one human being cannot be loved by everybody. But the general consensus across the country is justice for President Moïse. They, as much as they say they have had their differences with him, it was not up to anybody at all to take the life of a president, especially a sitting president that was at home in his own presidential villa. I think that on its own is making people very upset. Never mind the policies he might have had. Never mind the
Okay.
the approach he might have.
Um, well, I think Giga is still asking here. He's asking that was he like a Donald Trump or was he like a Biden for Haiti? I don't know if that's a great comparison, but I mean, it's a question.
No, I think as I sort of mentioned that what made his role very difficult. He's been in power since 2000. He was in power since 2017, and they were meant to have elections in 2018, but didn't have elections. And earlier this year, January times, some of the Senate members, their Senate sort of time expired in Senate, and so as a result, he was leading a very sort of broken political system, so to speak. And as such, it's very difficult to judge him whether he's a Donald Trump or a Biden because he was in a position where he's trying to unite political factions and trying to unite everybody within Haiti through a very serious political crisis.
Okay, well, we have another question or I think a comment here. Let me just quickly read it while we're wrapping up. Um, Someone here, okay, I think Lucia is trying to respond to the question by Giga, but she says, I'm inclined to the scapegoat theory. There's a lot of reasons behind the assassination, she says. I would really like for Lucia to share some of her reasons, but she says she's inclined to the scapegoat theory. How bad can a president be that people would want him dead so badly?
And I think it's more to do with the instability of the political systems, um, more than the the badness of President Moise himself. It was to do with the instability of the political scenario. For example, his death posed so many other questions that even today we're still trying to figure out. So I suspect whoever was behind this motive was behind it, hoping that it brings about further instability, and with that instability, they capitalize from that. And it was more of a capital gain. What do I have to gain? And I want to gain something from it rather than President Moïse being awfully terrible at his job.
Well, we have to go because we are overrunning our time. But I want to say thank you so much, Brian. I will bring you back because you're my favorite person when it has to be do with Haiti. I think that you you are very very objective when you're giving the analysis on as to what's happening in Haiti. One would really hope that with all that's happening, the people, the government, everybody would, take something away from this and hope that the best will happen. And of course, one would also ask in closing, whatever the parties, the government, the politicians are doing, it has to be someone or whoever takes over from President Moise has to be someone who resonates with the people, someone who the people agree with, and someone who would have the interest of, the average Haitian. I'm guessing you agree with me?
Quite certainly, yes. And I think a lot is on Ariel Henry's shoulders. He has to set up this consensus government as soon as possible. He has to seriously, in a way, unite the Haitian people and show some level of stability before elections are had. And he needs to announce elections as soon as possible, because him announcing elections as soon as possible is saying, giving the people of Haiti the mandate to choose who they want after President Moïse and how they want their country run after President Moïse. And I think a lot is on his shoulders right now. Never mind the him trying to lead the big investigation on what happened with the president. It is now trying to deliver a government that can deliver elections as soon as possible in the most stable and calm way as possible.
Okay, I think that you have even answered the question. Somebody just sent a question. I just want you to answer. He's asking, what would be the ideal government for Haiti right now? And I think it just is summed up in what we just said now. It has to be someone that the people really agree with, and of course, the policies and programs that this government, would come up with has to be one that takes the people along. Brian Lunga is the political editor of the Southern African Times, and he's been speaking with us from the United Kingdom. Thank you so much, Brian. I will have you back here. And of course, you can check out Brian. His handle is here on the platform. So you can also check him out on social media. He's on Instagram, he's on Twitter, and he's on Clubhouse, in case you are a fan of Clubhouse. Brian is always there to give his unbiased analysis on issues around the country. Thank you so much, Brian. It was really good having this conversation with you.
Just thank you very much, and thank you for everyone tuning in.
Great. Thank you for coming. And I want to thank you all for watching, all those who commented. You can watch a playback of this video on HAPS TV, or you can go on my YouTube page, Mary-Ann Duke Okon, and watch it. You can watch it on my Twitter handle at Mimi Ayo. That's MIMIEYO. I will be back soon to give you more updates on stories that are breaking across Africa and across the world. I am Mary-Ann Duke Okon from Lagos, Nigeria. Have a good evening.